Petrol stations are hit by lorry driver shortages as a number of forecourts across the country are forced to close. BP's called the situation very bad, with action being taken to stop supplies running out. And the government is being warned things could get worse quickly.
The government really does need to get a grip with the hauliers, with the oil companies involved, of the HGV driver situation before it gets out of control.
Also tonight, killed on a 5-minute walk to meet a friend. Police say they're shocked by the murder of Sabrina Nessa. The family who lost their High Court fight for changes in the laws surrounding terminations and Down syndrome. And the Magic Circle conjures up its first woman president, whose tricks come with a climate message.
I love seeing people's faces light up and hearing their gasps of surprise.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. Some petrol stations have been forced to close after running out of fuel, becoming the latest victims of the UK's supply chain shortages. ITV News has learned that BP has warned the government it'll ration deliveries of petrol and diesel to make sure there's enough to go round. At a meeting, one executive told ministers the situation was very bad. It's all because of that shortage of HGV drivers, which is affecting lots of other industries. Tonight, the government said motorists should buy fuel as normal. But as our business editor Joel Hills now reports, there's concern over how long the supplies will last.
On the A20 in Kent, this service station is running dry. There's not been a delivery by BP for 2 days, and they're down to ultimate diesel. The Petrol Retailers Association has members which run 5,000 forecourts in the UK. How serious is this?
There have been intermittent shortages from several oil companies through the summer, but this looks like being more serious. And so the government really does need to get a grip with the hauliers, with the oil companies involved, of the HGV driver situation before it gets out of control.
There's plenty of petrol and diesel around, but BP's struggling to transport it from depots to forecourts because of a shortage of HGV drivers. At a meeting organised by the Cabinet Office last Thursday, BP's head of UK retail described the situation as very bad. She said BP has 2/3 of normal forecourt stock levels required for smooth operations and that levels are declining rapidly. The company is preparing to restrict deliveries to 90% of their 1,200 forecourts and expects the next few weeks to be really difficult. As it stands, BP says it's only having to temporarily close a handful of its forecourts every week, and it's trying its best to minimise disruption. The company plans to prioritise. Most sites will have to manage without a delivery 1 day a week, but motorway service stations will be restocked as normal. BP subcontracts fuel delivery to Hoya, one of the UK's big hauliers. The company has hiked pay by as much as 25%, but it still has 50 vacancies for drivers, which it's struggling to fill.
In the short term, just paying more isn't going to help. There is a shortage of drivers within the UK, and everyone is fighting for those same drivers, and pay is obviously increasing as a result of that.
The government says it's in talks with BP, that there is no shortage of fuel and that people should buy fuel as normal.
We're trying to tackle this at source with the sector. We know there are challenges. We know it's going to be a difficult winter, but I wouldn't encourage people to panic buy.
Back in Kent, and the cavalry has arrived with 3 days' worth of fuel. The pumps here are open again, but goodness, it's been tight.
So, Joel, this driver crisis is impacting so many different industries. So what's the answer to fixing it then?
Well, BP wants what Tesco wants, what Amazon wants, what McDonald's wants, what so many businesses for several months have been calling for. It wants the government to make it easier to bring in HGV drivers temporarily from abroad. The government does not want to do that. Partly, it argues, because there are driver shortages in other countries, so it wouldn't work. Partly, one suspects, because post-Brexit, it's not a terribly good look politically. And partly because the government seems determined to solve this problem domestically. It believes that better pay, faster training, more apprenticeships will solve all these recruitment problems. Companies agree, but they argue not fast enough.
Joel, thank you. Detectives are investigating whether primary school teacher Sabrina Nessa was killed by a stranger who is still at large. The 28-year-old is thought to have been murdered as she walked through a park near her home in south-east London on Friday. Chloe Keedy has the latest on the police investigation.
The police tape marks out a murder scene as people lay flowers close to where a young woman was killed as she made her way through her local park. 28-year-old primary school teacher Sabrina Nessa was attacked as she walked to meet a friend for a drink on a Friday night. In a tribute posted online, her sister said, "My beautiful, talented and caring sister, my inspiration to always put myself first and never let anybody put me down. Never in my life did I or my sisters or my mum and dad think this could happen to us." Police today renewed their appeal for help to catch her killer.
Maybe you saw someone acting strangely inside the park or running away from it. If you were in the area, please think back and let us know if you have any information.
Sabina left her home in Astle Road in Kidbrooke just before 8:30 p.m. on Friday night and made her way towards the Depot pub to meet a friend, but she never made it. Police believe she was approached by an individual and attacked as she made the short walk through Cater Park. Sabina's body was found here at around 5:30 p.m. the next day. That's nearly 24 hours after the time police believe she was murdered, but she hadn't been reported missing. People that use this park regularly say they now feel nervous about walking through it.
Brought my son with me today because I've had to go to the shop again, so I didn't really want to go on my own.
More definitely needs to be done. There needs to be more police in the area.
Yesterday, police held a meeting with residents in an attempt to reassure them, while the local council has been handing out panic alarms. A genuine gesture, says this campaigner, but one which misses the point.
A panic alarm isn't going to stop you getting attacked on your walk home. What's going to stop you getting attacked on your walk home is your perpetrator not attacking you, is a culture change that means women aren't at risk of being attacked in public spaces or behind closed doors.
This is a small community still very much in shock, one which now faces a worrying wait for updates and for answers. Well, police said today that they are looking at the possibility that Sabina was attacked by a stranger, and I think that's one of the reasons why people who live here are feeling concerned. The community has organised a vigil tomorrow evening in the square just behind this park, partly to highlight the issue of women's safety, but also to remember Sabina and to show support for her family.
Chloe, thank you. Next to the warning that households could see their energy bills rising by around £350 a year. More than 1.5 million customers face increased prices after the recent collapse of 6 suppliers. And today, Labour accused ministers of complacency over an early warning of risks to supplies. Here's our political reporter, Shihab Khan.
Energy prices continue to rise and more companies are buckling and going bankrupt, impacting nearly 1.5 million consumers. Concern around the country grows as we head into the autumn. Some are worried, others terrified. Yasmin's supplier has gone bust and she's concerned at the prospect of her bills rising.
I budget by going online and knowing exactly how much I'm going to spend. So things like that it will have an effect. With winter coming on too, that's just a horrible thought.
Avro is one of several energy companies to have gone bust. Those who took out a one-year fixed price deal with them in March would have paid on average £920 a year. If you took out a deal in August, that had already risen to an average of £1,087 because of rising gas prices. Avro's customers will now automatically be moved to another supplier and could have to pay the maximum price, which is capped at £1,277. That's a potential rise of up to £350. Energy company Utilita is now no longer taking new customers. They're warning that the current system just doesn't work.
It is quite clear now that there are significant flaws in the price capping mechanism that is causing energy suppliers to supply customers at below their cost. That is clearly not a sustainable position. So at some point, we need to have a discussion about what's going to change about the price cap.
As the crisis goes on, the business secretary faced tough questions in the Commons. He said it wasn't on the government to honour previous tariffs and warned more energy companies could go bust.
And we may, unfortunately, see more suppliers exit the market in the coming weeks. And government, I repeat, will not be bailing out failed energy companies.
But many will feel the consequences of that, and MPs from his own party pushed for changes to taxes on fuel and energy.
We did it for the hospitality industry, which was badly affected by COVID-19. Why don't we abolish VAT for consumers on fuel now?
Surely the Conservative answer to this is to reduce VAT on energy bills.
That's one for the Chancellor, but as the government continues to deal with this crisis, there's pressure to minimise the financial impact. Shihab Khan, ITV News, Westminster.
And for a full list of which suppliers have gone bust and what to do if yours is among them, go to our website, itv.com/news. The Bank of England has warned inflation will rise in the coming months because of those higher energy bills and other rising prices. It said inflation could rise above 4% by the end of the year. Today, the bank kept interest rates at their record low of 0.1%. And the Prime Minister has urged world leaders to show that humans are capable of learning and maturing. As he said, they must all do their bit to halt the destruction of the planet. He was giving an address at the UN General Assembly in New York on the final stop of his trip to the US. A woman with Down's syndrome has lost her High Court battle to overturn abortion laws, which she says don't respect her life. Most pregnancies in Britain can't be terminated beyond 24 weeks, but judges today upheld an exception for cases where a baby is at risk of being born with serious disabilities, including Down's, as Rebecca Barry now reports.
Children and their parents who say the UK's abortion law is discriminatory. An unborn child with Down syndrome can be aborted up until birth. Heidi Crowther came to the High Court to argue that stigmatises people like her. But the judges dismissed the case.
I'm feeling really upset and gutted. In the eyes of the law, I'm down on. And I don't want to be looked down on.
Heidi wants to change people's perception of Down syndrome.
Well, I've had a great life. I live on my own for 5 years, and I met my husband online. The court system made me feel that my life is not worth living. But I know it is, but the court didn't see that.
There's a 24-week limit for abortion unless there's a substantial risk of physical or mental abnormalities.
He's just so funny, he's amazing, and he amazes me every day. The things that he can do, the things that he can achieve.
Moya was 34 weeks pregnant when she discovered her son had Down syndrome.
As a mum, I feel hurt by the court's decision. I've got 2 sons, Tom and Aidan, and I love and I value both of my boys equally, and I think that the law should too.
The court ruled the law aims to strike a balance between the rights of the unborn child and the rights of women.
These can be incredibly complex circumstances. Women need the time and space to be able to make decisions, understand the condition that they're facing, speak to their healthcare professionals and make the decision that is right for them.
Heidi and Moya say they'll keep on fighting and plan to appeal. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. Why Anthony Joshua says the Tokyo Olympics has been an inspiration ahead of his latest title fight. Plus, the child tricksters hoping to learn from a history maker in the magic circle. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. Family doctors have told ITV News they're at breaking point with high levels of stress and a shortage of staff. The Royal College of GPs says more doctors are urgently needed so they can spend more time with patients. Earlier this week, the Prime Minister called for more face-to-face consultations over concerns serious illnesses are being missed. But as our health editor Emily Morgan reports, they're facing unprecedented demand.
If the phones stop ringing here, the receptionists know they are broken. Every day there are too many calls for them to answer. That never stops them trying, though. But this is the reality at the West Hampstead Medical Centre. So many patients and too little time.
This demand has exploded.
One of the partners here, Dr. Al-Qaswini, says his job is now unrecognisable given the extra work he's having to do.
I am behind my laptop 11 o'clock at night doing online consultations. That is a reality. As you've seen in my lunch break, I've been giving child vaccines. We haven't had a lunch break, and that's quite usual. Also planning for the delivery of the boosters.
Do you feel like you're reaching saturation point?
Yeah.
Do you feel sad? It's got to this point?
Absolutely. What can you do? We do our best, but it's never enough.
Despite what he says, GPs have been accused of not seeing enough of their patients in person, relying still on phone and online consultations.
This surgery is seeing just over 50% of its patients face-to-face, and increasing that would be really difficult right now because of infection control. Doctors also say that the majority of their patients prefer over-the-phone consultations, but for some, that has led to a misdiagnosis.
Nicole is one of 175,000 patients who was misdiagnosed last year. She was only offered phone appointments about an ulcer on her tongue and was only diagnosed with cancer when midwives spotted it. She's since had half her tongue removed.
It was pushing for a face-to-face, every phone call, every email, and they've not really had much to say. They've just apologised for the situation.
So what is going on? In July, there were over 25 million GP appointments, roughly the same number as before the pandemic. 57% of consultations in July were face-to-face. That's down from 80% in 2019. But the number of GPs has also gone down. There are currently over 34,000 in England, around 10,000 fewer than before the pandemic. The British Medical Association strongly disputes they could be doing more.
Over 50% of consultations taking place at this moment in time in general practice are being done face-to-face. That is not a general practice who is not, who's hiding.
It used to be 80% though, didn't it?
At a very different time, and at a very different time where appointments were still fewer in number.
The Health Secretary met with the BMA today, a sign perhaps things could change. Emily Morgan, ITV News.
Director Roger Michel, whose films include Notting Hill, Venus and My Cousin Rachel, has died at the age of 65. In a statement, his publicist said it was with great sadness that the director's family confirmed his death. The 1999 film Notting Hill, starring Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts, of course, became one of the highest-grossing British films of all time. Supermodel Linda Evangelista has said she has been left permanently deformed after undergoing a cosmetic procedure. The 56-year-old, who was one of the most famous models of the 1990s, said she experienced a rare side effect after a fat reduction procedure carried out 5 years ago. And the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have visited One World Trade Center in New York. Harry and Meghan posed for photographs in the observatory at the top of the skyscraper with Mayor Bill de Blasio. The Duchess said it was wonderful to be back in New York. World heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua has told ITV News that watching Britain's Olympians in Tokyo has renewed his fighting spirit. He's preparing to face the Ukrainian Alexandra Usyk at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday. But despite being the younger, taller and heavier of the two, he told Martha Fairley he's not taking anything for granted.
face to face for the first time ahead of what's being billed the fight of the year. Ukrainian Alexander Usyk is one of boxing's colourful characters and has his sights set on stealing Anthony Joshua's heavyweight crown. But Joshua will have the home advantage when he steps into the ring in front of a crowd of 60,000 here at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
What is it going to be like having that massive home crowd behind you again?
It's going to be phenomenal. Look, I know, as you said, I'm going to be in front of 60,000 people, but for me, I've just got to put myself in the most comfortable place mentally that no problem. This is just it's the same ring, the same goals, the same discipline, just with a few more people watching what I do, and I do it all the time in the gym. Everything I've been working.
Both men won Olympic gold in London 2012, but while former cruiserweight Usyk has never lost a professional fight, Anthony Joshua lost all his world titles briefly in 2019. He says watching this year's Olympians in Tokyo has reminded him to take nothing for granted.
You've just got to give your best. Like certain fighters and athletes in the Olympics that were supposed to medal didn't. Certain fighters and athletes, they medaled and they went on and they're having fun now. So life sometimes you just never know what's going to happen, but just have fun with it.
British boxing fans are hoping a win on Saturday could pave the way for a fight with Tyson Fury that fell through earlier this year. First, Joshua will have to take on Usyk in what could be the toughest fight so far of his career. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
And from a commanding presence in the ring to an honorary commander on the water. James Bond actor Daniel Craig has today been welcomed into the Royal Navy. He's been made an honorary officer, matching the rank of Britain's best-known spy. The actor said it was a privilege and an honour by the appointment, which Minister of Defence bosses say marks his personal support for the armed forces. And finally tonight, it may have taken more than a century, but the Magic Circle has finally conjured up its first woman president. At 28, Megan Swan is also the youngest person to lead the prestigious club. And she told our correspondent Dan Rivers about the trick to her success.
Since 1905, its members have solemnly sworn not to divulge the tricks of the trade.
But you'll find that it slowly became what a gentleman always carries underneath his arm.
But since its founding, the Magic Circle has been a very male-dominated institution. From Tommy Cooper's unique brand of failing magic
Pull it!
to Paul Daniels' slick illusions, women were generally relegated to the glamorous assistant. But now, 30 years after the Magic Circle finally opened its doors to women, a female magician has made it to the top.
I've definitely broken the glass ceiling, and I've been the first, and I would hope that means that there'll be many more women who join and reach these positions in the future. It's definitely a historic moment.
Megan specialises in magic with a message, how we need to look after the planet, her tricks resonating with the next generation of wand wavers like 9-year-old Florence Cowan, who today got a video masterclass.
And I'm using 2 solid metal rings, but watch.
Wow. I'm very excited when I turn 10 to join the Junior Magic Circle, to go in Megan's footsteps and watch her perform again.
What is it about magic that's so captivating for you?
I love seeing people's faces light up and hearing their gasps of surprise and just knowing that everyone's enjoying themselves, really.
An inspiration for the next generation of the Magic Circle, who by the looks of things are already learning the art of illusion. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
Don't worry, I'm not going to show you my magic trick. Not at all. Right, that's it from me for now. Tom will be here with News at 10, but from everybody on the Evening News team, enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.
Today we'll see warmer temperatures.